annals of criminal history, certain names become etched into public consciousness, symbols of unimaginable evil. Yet, there exists a darker, more unsettling category. Individuals whose monstrous acts are so profound, so widespread, that their very memory is often suppressed or simply never fully grasped by the wider world. Imagine, if you will, a figure so consumed by malice that his thousands of crimes remain largely unheard of. The true scale of his depravity a chilling secret. This narrative delves into the life and deeds of such a man. Carl Panzram. He was not merely a criminal. He was one of America's most brutal serial killers, a figure whose notoriety, paradoxically, remained surprisingly limited despite the vastness and savagery of his transgressions. From the outset, the story of Carl Panzram casts a chilling shadow. This was a man driven by an innate, overwhelming cruelty, a force of destruction that recognized no borders. His merciless killings spanned continents, leaving behind a trail of victims and a legacy of unimaginable suffering, all executed with a chilling indifference to human life. His very existence was a testament to the depths of human malevolence. The story of Carl Panzram begins not in a shadowed alleyway or a secluded forest, but in the seemingly ordinary setting of Minnesota, where he was born on June 28, 1891. His early life, however, was anything but ordinary, quickly descending into a cycle of brutalization that would profoundly shape the man he became. From a very young age, Panzram experienced the harsh realities of institutional life, particularly suffering severe abuse within reform schools. These formative years, intended to correct and guide, instead served as a crucible of cruelty, forging within him a deep-seated resentment and a violent worldview. The experiences within these early institutions stripped away any semblance of innocence, replacing it with a hardened cynicism and an escalating capacity for violence. Panzram did not remain confined by these early experiences. Driven by an innate defiance and a growing capacity for ruthlessness, he frequently escaped early institutions. These initial acts of rebellion marked the beginning of a lifelong trajectory of criminality. From his youth, Panzram embarked upon a path defined by a relentless spree of illegal activities. His criminal repertoire was extensive, encompassing everything from burglaries and arson to acts of brutal rape. These were not isolated incidents but a consistent pattern of behavior, indicating a deep-seated disregard for law, order, and human well-being. He moved through society as a perpetual outlaw, always one step ahead of justice, propelled by an escalating compulsion for transgression. To evade the relentless pursuit of law enforcement, Panzram skillfully adopted numerous aliases. He shed identities with the ease of changing clothes, becoming Jefferson Baldwin one moment, Jack Allen the next, and countless others in between. Each new name provided a temporary veil of anonymity, allowing him to resurface in new locations, leaving a trail of crimes behind him without a consistent identity that could be easily traced. This constant reinvention underscored his cunning and his determination to remain elusive, making him a phantom in the criminal underworld, a man without a fixed identity, existing only to commit further acts of violence and destruction. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of Carl Panzram's inner world was his intensely misanthropic philosophy. His hatred was not directed at specific individuals or institutions. It encompassed the entirety of humankind. He believed, with an unwavering conviction, that humanity deserved extinction. This was not a passing thought or an expression of frustration but a core tenet of his worldview, a driving force behind his monstrous actions. His violence was not just a means to an end. It was an expression of this profound contempt for all human life. This pervasive animosity fueled his every transgression, turning his criminal acts into a perverse form of protest against existence itself, cementing his legacy as a singularly terrifying figure in the annals of true crime. Carl Panzram's criminal activity was not confined by geographical borders. His capacity for violence spanned continents, painting a global canvas of cruelty that few, if any, serial killers have ever matched. His was a truly nomadic and indiscriminate spree of terror, a testament to his unfettered animosity towards humanity. According to his own chilling accounts, Panzram claimed responsibility for 21 murders. This number, however, is widely believed to be a conservative estimate. Many investigators and researchers studying his case suggest that the true count of his victims could well exceed 100 individuals, scattered across various locations. This staggering potential body count underscores the unprecedented scale of his destructive path. His crimes crisscrossed the United States, leaving a trail of death from coast to coast, but his depravity also extended far beyond American shores. Perhaps most horrifyingly, his violence reached the distant lands of Portuguese Angola, a place where his cruelty found new and unspeakable expressions. His victims were as varied as the locations he traversed, reflecting his indiscriminate hatred. There was no specific type that he targeted other than their humanity itself. His path of destruction included vulnerable sailors, individuals often adrift and without strong connections, making them easy prey. Innocent children also fell victim to his brutality, a particularly heinous aspect of his crimes that showcased his utter lack of conscience. Even within the confines of penal institutions, his rage found outlets, leading to the murder of fellow inmates. Beyond these, oil rig workers in remote locations also became targets, demonstrating his willingness to seek out and victimize anyone who crossed his path, regardless of their background or circumstances. Panzram employed a brutal and varied repertoire of methods, each designed to inflict maximum suffering and often ending in death. His arsenal of violence included shooting his victims, a quick and impersonal means of termination. He also resorted to bludgeoning, utilizing blunt force to brutally end lives, indicating a close-quarters, personal savagery. Strangulation was another method, demonstrating a chilling intimacy in his final acts against his victims, a direct application of force until life ceased. But beyond merely killing, Panzram frequently engaged in acts of rape, often not as an end in itself, but as a component of sadistic torture, drawing out the suffering of his victims before their ultimate demise. This blend of methods underscored his adaptability and his profound enjoyment of inflicting pain and humiliation. His time in Angola stands as one of the most horrifying chapters in his extensive criminal history. While there, Panzram confessed to monstrous acts, including the rape and murder of young boys, a testament to his utter lack of moral boundaries. The details of these crimes were particularly disturbing, revealing a depth of depravity that shocked even seasoned investigators. Beyond these, he also admitted to shooting 6 men, not in self-defense or during a robbery, but in cold blood. After taking their lives, he then committed the unthinkable act of feeding their bodies to crocodiles, a method of disposal that was not only practical in the remote environment but also served as a final, gruesome insult to their humanity, ensuring their remains would never be recovered and their fates forever obscured. These acts in Angola underscore the global reach of his violence and the extreme lengths to which his hatred would drive him. Panzram's own words offer the most direct insight into the abyss of his mind. He chillingly confessed to fantasizing about mass poisonings, an ambition that spoke to a desire for widespread destruction on an industrial scale. Even more disturbingly, he harbored fantasies of sinking a battleship to ignite a war, illustrating a grand, nihilistic vision of global chaos. His most infamous quote serves as a stark encapsulation of his philosophy. "I was so full of hate, my only regret is that I wasn't born dead." This statement, delivered with a chilling frankness, revealed a man for whom existence itself was a burden, and whose entire being was consumed by an all-encompassing animosity towards the living. It was a declaration of pure, unadulterated misanthropy, a terrifying insight into the mind of a predator who truly wished for the annihilation of all. Despite his sprawling and often untraceable criminal career, the law eventually caught up to Karl Panzram, not for his most heinous acts, but for a comparatively minor transgression. His capture, however, would inadvertently unlock the terrifying scope of his unpunished violence, bringing to light a darkness few could have ever imagined. The specific chain of events that led to his apprehension began in 1928, when Panzram found himself in Baltimore. He was arrested there for burglary, a crime that, while serious, paled in comparison to the murders and rapes that defined his true criminal identity. It was a mundane capture for an extraordinary monster, a seemingly routine police action that would, in time, unravel a global tapestry of depravity. Once in custody, something shifted within Panzram. Whether it was a profound sense of resignation, a perverse desire for recognition, or simply a deep-seated need to unburden himself, he began to talk. What started as a confession to the burglary quickly escalated into something far more expansive and chilling. Panzram began confessing to crimes that stretched across multiple states, detailing a criminal journey that baffled and horrified the investigators. The meticulous records of unsolved cases across the nation began to find disturbing connections in his narrative, painting the picture of a lone, relentless perpetrator. Following his initial confessions, Panzram was incarcerated in Washington, D.C. It was within the confines of this detention facility that an unlikely relationship began to form, one that would prove pivotal in bringing the full scope of Panzram's evil to light. A prison guard named Henry Lesser displayed an unusual degree of patience and human interest in the notorious prisoner. This was not typical for the era, where prison staff often treated inmates with harsh detachment. Lesser, however, saw something in Panzram, perhaps a flicker of intelligence beneath the layers of hate, or simply a man consumed by his own demons. It was Lesser who provided Panzram with a seemingly innocuous tool: paper. This simple act of providing writing materials, seemingly small, would have monumental consequences. With the paper provided by Henry Lesser, Carl Panzram embarked upon a monumental and deeply disturbing project. He began to chronicle his life and his crimes, producing a sprawling, self-penned narrative that would eventually become known as Killer, a journal of murder. This chilling autobiography ran to an astonishing 40,000 words, a meticulous, unsparing account of his life from childhood abuse to his global rampage of violence. Within its pages, Panzram laid bare the full extent of his depravity, detailing murders, rapes, arsons, and countless other crimes with a cold, almost clinical precision. More than just a confession of deeds, the journal also offered an unvarnished window into his worldview. It was here that his intense misanthropy, his belief that humanity deserved extinction, and his complete absence of remorse were articulated with stark clarity. The autobiography served as a chilling testament to his self-perception, a declaration of his identity as a destructive force. It was an unfiltered voice from the abyss, confirming the darkest suspicions about his nature and providing an invaluable, albeit horrifying, document of a uniquely twisted mind. This journal, nurtured by the unlikely bond with a prison guard, became the most comprehensive and horrifying record of his unimaginable criminal career, confirming his status as a truly terrifying figure in history. Carl Panzram's detailed confessions, particularly those articulated within his extensive autobiography, solidified his fate. However, his story was not destined to conclude quietly within a prison cell. Even after his capture and the revelation of his monstrous deeds, Panzram demonstrated a persistent and unyielding capacity for violence, culminating in a final, deadly act of defiance that underscored his irredeemable nature. The incident occurred in June 1929, while Panzram was incarcerated at the notorious Leavenworth Penitentiary. His target was Robert Warnke, a prison supervisor. In a brutal and unprovoked attack, Panzram beat Warnke to death using an iron bar. This act of extreme violence, committed within the supposedly secure confines of a federal prison, highlighted Panzram's inherent rage and his absolute disregard for authority and human life, even when his own liberty was already forfeit. It was a stark reminder that his capacity for brutality was not confined to the outside world but was an intrinsic part of his being, a force that could erupt at any moment, against anyone. This murder, committed while awaiting trial for his other heinous crimes, added another layer of infamy to his already dark legacy and set the stage for his final legal reckoning. The subsequent trial for the murder of Robert Warnke commenced in April 1930. In a move that underscored his defiance and his profound arrogance, Panzram chose to defend himself in court. This decision was not an attempt to prove his innocence. Rather, it was a platform for him to articulate his nihilistic worldview and to confront the system he so utterly despised. Throughout the proceedings, Panzram displayed a chilling composure. He showed no remorse for the murder of Warnke, nor for any of the countless other atrocities he had confessed to. His demeanor was cold, detached, and utterly devoid of human emotion. Accounts from the courtroom painted a picture of a man utterly indifferent to the legal process and to the fate that awaited him. When the inevitable verdict of guilty was delivered, and he was sentenced to death, Panzram's reaction was perhaps his most disturbing public display. He laughed. This chilling, hollow sound echoed through the courtroom, a final, defiant expression of his contempt for justice and for human life itself. His laughter was not one of mirth, but of pure, unadulterated nihilism, a final declaration of his victory over the very concept of morality. Karl Panzram's life ended on September 5, 1930, when he was executed by hanging. Even in his final moments, as he stood on the gallows, his nature remained unyielding, his defiance absolute. His last words were a testament to his ingrained hatred and his unrepentant spirit. When asked if he had any final statement, he responded with chilling clarity. "Yes, hurry it up. I could kill a dozen men." These were not words of regret, or fear, or even contemplation. They were a final, chilling affirmation of his insatiable desire for destruction, a declaration that even on the precipice of his own death, his capacity for violence remained undiminished, his hatred unquenched. It was a fittingly dark end to a life defined by unimaginable cruelty, leaving no doubt as to the depths of his depravity. The reasons why Panzram was so terrifying extend far beyond the sheer number of his victims or the brutality of his methods. His terrifying nature stemmed from a unique confluence of characteristics that set him apart from many other notorious killers. He was demonstrably not driven by fame, a common motivation for some serial murderers who crave attention or a perverse form of legacy. Nor was he primarily driven by sexual mania. Though rape was a component of his crimes, it often appeared secondary to the infliction of pain and torture. Instead, Panzram was motivated by something far more elemental and pervasive: pure hatred of humankind. This all-consuming misanthropy permeated his very being, making his violence a philosophical statement against existence itself. This distinguishes him from many others, whose motives might be rooted in specific psychological disorders, obsessions, or societal grievances. Panzram's hate was a fundamental, universal force within him. Furthermore, his ability to execute his crimes across multiple countries spoke to his terrifying capacity as a nomadic and calculating predator. He was not confined to a single hunting ground or a specific geographic area, like many other serial killers. His ability to evade capture for so long, to transition between identities and locations while continuing his spree, showcased an advanced level of cunning and adaptability. This nomadic nature made him an elusive phantom, impossible to track by conventional means, embodying a global threat that few criminals have ever posed. His chilling autobiography, Killer, a Journal of Murder, which initially seemed to offer a pathway to understanding, ultimately exposed an even more disturbing layer to his story: the prison brutality he endured and witnessed during his early institutionalization. While Panzram was undeniably a monstrous individual, his account also highlighted the harsh treatment he received within the very systems designed to rehabilitate. Some argue that this early and sustained exposure to brutality, rather than correcting his path, instead fueled his violence, hardening his resolve and deepening his hatred for society. This perspective does not excuse his crimes, but it offers a grim insight into how cycles of violence can be perpetuated, turning victims of abuse into perpetrators of unspeakable acts, albeit in Panzram's case, to an extreme degree. Unlike many sensationalized killers whose stories are often packaged for entertainment or morbid fascination, Panzram's narrative embodies a raw, unadulterated form of extreme nihilism and cruelty. There is no romanticism, no complex psychological profile that makes him relatable, no sensational hook beyond the sheer horror of his actions. His story is a direct confrontation with the purest forms of human evil, devoid of any redeeming qualities or relatable motivations. He was, as he himself proclaimed, full of hate, and his life was a testament to that all-consuming destructive force. His lack of a human motive, beyond pure malice, makes his story particularly difficult to digest, and perhaps contributes to why his name is not as widely known as others, despite the scale of his horrific deeds. The chilling saga of Karl Panzram, a name conspicuously absent from the casual true crime discussions and mainstream media narratives, stands as a profoundly unsettling testament to the darkest corners of human malevolence. His story, though less sensationalized than many others, is perhaps more disturbing precisely because it strips away all pretense, revealing a raw, unadulterated form of evil driven by pure, all-consuming hatred. The enduring impact of Panzram's life and crimes lies not in their complexity, but in their horrifying simplicity. A man who simply desired to inflict pain and eradicate life, a chilling embodiment of a monster forged from abuse and consumed by an insatiable animosity. The opening assertion that you've never heard of the real monster behind thousands of crimes finds its brutal validation in Panzram's anonymity. This lack of widespread recognition, for a man who confessed to a global rampage of murder, rape, and destruction, is itself a deeply disturbing phenomenon. It contrasts sharply with the infamy of other serial killers, whose names become household words, their pathologies dissected for public consumption. Panzram's story defies easy categorization or sensational packaging for mass media. It lacks the psychological hooks or the macabre allure that often accompany the narratives of more famous killers. Instead, his legacy is one of unvarnished cruelty, a stark reminder that some evils are too raw, too devoid of any mitigating factors, to be comfortably consumed or readily integrated into popular culture. This intentional non-sensationalism, as noted, is perhaps why his story is not on mainstream platforms, precisely because it is pure human evil, unadorned and unmitigated. A key element in understanding Panzram's terrifying efficacy was his intentional, methodical, and profoundly cruel approach. His crimes were not random acts of impulsive violence. They were the product of a calculating mind, albeit one twisted by unimaginable hate. Whether meticulously stealing the barium acetate in a fictional parallel, or the documented reality of his varied methods, from the cold efficiency of a gunshot to the protracted brutality of bludgeoning and torture, each act was executed with a deliberate focus on the suffering of his victims. His ability to adapt his methods, from shooting men and feeding them to crocodiles in Angola, to beating a prison supervisor to death with an iron bar, showcased a chilling versatility in inflicting death. This methodical cruelty, coupled with his capacity for seemingly calm behavior, allowed him to evade capture for decades, becoming a ghost who haunted continents, leaving behind a trail of devastated lives that stretched across thousands of miles. His self-professed regret that he wasn't born dead was not a plea for sympathy, but a further testament to his conviction that his very existence was a torment, best expressed through the torment of others. The profound misanthropy that defined Panzram was the driving force behind his atrocities. His belief that humanity deserved extinction was not a fleeting philosophical musing, but a core conviction that fueled every act of violence. This was not a killer seeking personal gratification in the traditional sense, but an individual whose purpose was to exact a terrible retribution upon a species he deemed unworthy of existence. His fantasized acts of mass poisoning and sinking battleships to ignite global conflict underscore the sheer scale of the destruction he yearned for, extending beyond individual victims to encompass entire populations. This cosmic level of hatred, divorced from personal vendettas or specific grievances, makes Panzram a uniquely terrifying figure. His crimes were, in essence, a manifestation of this profound existential nihilism, a man acting as an instrument of destruction against a world he despised. Furthermore, Panzram's autobiography, Killer, a Journal of Murder, serves as a chilling, unfiltered window into the genesis and perpetuation of his evil. While it lays bare his unimaginable crimes, it also exposes the brutalizing environments of early 20th century reform schools and prisons. His accounts of harsh treatment and systemic cruelty within these institutions offer a disturbing, albeit partial, explanation for the depth of his rage. While this perspective in no way excuses his horrific actions, it suggests a vicious cycle. Early abuse fostered a profound hatred, which was then exacerbated by further brutality within the very systems designed to control or rehabilitate. The journal reveals a feedback loop, where institutional violence seemingly fueled his own violence, hardening his resolve and cementing his identity as an aggressor. It complicates the narrative of pure, innate evil by showing how external forces can contribute to the shaping of a monstrous psyche, even if the ultimate responsibility for his actions rests solely with him. The final, sobering reflection on Panzram's story is its raw, unadorned truth. This was not a character from a work of fiction, embellished for dramatic effect. As the concluding line grimly asserts, he was not a monster of myth. He was flesh and blood, living among us. This reality is perhaps the most frightening aspect of all. Karl Panzram existed. He walked among ordinary people, committed unspeakable acts, and then faded back into the anonymity of society, only to reappear elsewhere and inflict further suffering. His life serves as a stark, uncomfortable reminder that the capacity for extreme evil is not confined to the fantastical realms of legend or the sensationalized accounts of the media. It can reside within a seemingly ordinary individual, operating with calculated intent, driven by an almost incomprehensible hatred, and leaving behind a legacy of absolute devastation. The silence that often surrounds his name, far from diminishing his impact, paradoxically amplifies the chilling truth. The most evil serial killers are sometimes the ones you've never heard of, their stories too raw, too stark, too devoid of any comfort or explanation to ever truly enter the public consciousness.
Thank you for watching. Like, share, and subscribe for more.